Hey HSM, in the last couple of episodes, we have talked about stretching our faith by making a commitment and starting something new. But let's stop for a minute and address the elephant in the room. I'm talking about bad habits. Bad habits that you know about and are trying to do something with, but also the bad habits that you have that you're actually okay with. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes we have this thought that we could stop our bad habit anytime we want to, but we just don't want to do it right now. And I have this really bad habit related to my phone. I can't stand to not check my news feed, at every commercial break when watching a Royals game, or even worse, when I'm in the middle of a conversation with my wife. Ouch, right? I mean, I try really hard not to do it, and sometimes I go long periods of time with having pretty good success, but ultimately I keep going back to this bad habit all the time. And if I was honest with you, I probably can't stop this habit on my own, or I already would have. As much as I want to believe that I could stop at any time, I'm not sure that I could. And now this habit may not necessarily keep me from growing in my faith, but let me run through these things with you. And you see if any of these things ring true for you. The first is that you've ever held a grudge. That you? Or maybe there's someone that you just can't stand. Or you've ever struggled to forgive someone. You've ever struggled to ask for forgiveness. I mean, you sometimes do things that hurt others or yourself and you can't seem to stop yourself. Or you make time for movies and video games, but you struggle to make time for God. Now, the Bible doesn't just call these bad habits. It actually says that these things are sinful. They can harm us spiritually and they can keep us from growing. So stretching our faith means that we need to make a commitment. And it also means that we can stretch our faith by starting something new. But we can also practice what I call the addition by subtraction method here, because we can stretch our faith by letting something go. Now remember, we looked at the goal of stretching and growing our faith, and that's what Paul explains in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. He says this, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all that he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." Now, don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. And then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So the last episode, we talked about Paul's encouragement later in Romans 12 to love, to serve, and to share. And he follows that up with some reminders of what we need to let go of in order to stretch our faith even more. So this is Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 16. Paul says, "Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Give careful thought to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. If possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourselves. Instead, leave room for God's wrath. Because it is written, 'Vengeance belongs to me. I will repay,' says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And if he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For in so doing, you will be heaping fiery coals on his head. Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good." Now, there are several things here that Paul says that we need to let go of. Things like being proud, or being a know-it-all, or holding grudges, or looking for revenge, or letting sin control us. I mean, there are quite a few don'ts in this part of Paul's letter. Now, you may not like that part, as you don't want anybody telling you what to do, or maybe you realize that you shouldn't do those things, but you don't know how to stop. And here's the thing here. Paul doesn't just tell us to stop doing something without telling us what to grab onto in place of it. Yes, he tells us to stop being proud and to stop being a know-it-all, or stop holding grudges and stop looking for revenge and stop letting sin control us. But he also tells us what to grab onto when we let loose of those things. Instead of being proud, grab onto humility. Instead of being a know-it-all, grab onto compassion. Instead of holding grudges, grab onto integrity. Instead of looking for revenge, grab onto peacemaking. And instead of letting sin control us, grab onto goodness. But what's at stake here? I mean, can't we keep growing by stretching our faith in other ways? I mean, sure, but I think we're limiting God's work in our lives by doing that. Because at some point we will have to trust and walk forward into obedience of what God is leading us towards. So a couple of years ago, while I was on a mission trip with our high school ministry, a student came up to me and he was really excited about what God was showing him on the trip and how he had seen God work while we were there. And he was pretty pumped up, and he told me he had decided to go forward to express his faith publicly in baptism. And I was really excited for him and asked him, hey, what brought you to that decision? And he reminded me that for the previous year, he had been struggling in his relationship with Jesus because he was asking for direction on what to do next and how to express his faith more clearly. He was stuck in his faith, in other words. And I remember after he talked with me through this, I realized that he had never taken that step of baptism before, but he was pretty hung up on why he wasn't ready to do that. And so I remember asking him, like, hey, what if God is waiting for you to say yes to baptism and being obedient in that before he gives you what the next step's going to be? And I wasn't implying that God was being silent with him, but that maybe God was showing him the next step in stretching and strengthening his faith, but he just wasn't willing to let go of whatever it was that was keeping him from doing that. See, Jordan's willingness to let go of his feelings about baptism and make a commitment to do something new launched him into a season of really incredible spiritual growth. He just had to let go of something and grab onto something that was more appealing in order to move forward. See, you and I have to have what I call a bigger and better yes that drives us to let go of what is hindering us and grab onto that yes instead. See, in Africa, a common way to hunt and catch a monkey is to take a jar with a small opening where the monkey can just barely reach his hand in. And you put something shiny in it. And the monkey comes along and the shiny thing gets their attention and they reach in to grab it. But when they grab it, their hand is in a fist now and they can't get it out because it's grasping onto something. They're stuck. The hunter will then just come along and go check on his jar with the shiny thing in it. And there's a monkey trying to get away with this shiny thing, screaming at the top of the lungs and not realizing that their grasp on this shiny thing is what's costing him his life. So what is the shiny thing that you're holding on to? I mean, do you realize that continuing to hold on to it may result in some kind of spiritual death? Stretching our faith will mean we need to make a commitment. It means that we can stretch our faith by doing something new and different. But stretching our faith also means that sometimes there are some things that we have to let go of, because the bigger and the better yes that we can grab onto is this exhilarating adventure that God is calling us to. We'll see you next time.